A chosen woman understands that the validation she needs does not come from the voices of people around her, but from the one who created her with divine intention. She is not swayed by applause, nor is she crushed by criticism, because she knows her worth is already established in heaven. When God calls her, that call itself becomes her certificate of approval. She does not need to prove her value to those who cannot see what God has placed inside her. Her identity is not something she earns through the recognition of others. It is something she receives through her relationship with the Almighty. There are moments in life when people may overlook her, misunderstand her, or even dismiss her dreams. But a chosen woman knows that human rejection often becomes divine redirection. Every time she faces a no from man, she reminds herself that she already has a yes from God. She does not chase people's approval because she knows that the same people who ignore her today may one day witness her being elevated by the hand of God. Her confidence rests not in human opinion, but in divine purpose. The chosen woman does not need to wear a mask to be accepted. She stands in authenticity, knowing that what God has planted in her spirit does not require human validation to bloom. Even if the world fails to recognize her potential, heaven does not overlook it. She understands that her anointing was not given through public applause, but through private encounter. Her approval was signed in prayer, sealed by faith, and witnessed by the presence of the Holy Spirit. She does not live to please people. She lives to please the one who chose her before the foundation of the world. When others measure their worth by titles, possessions, or popularity, the chosen woman measures hers by purpose, obedience, and peace. She realizes that the favor of God cannot be earned through performance. It flows through surrender. Because of that, she does not compete for attention. She positions herself for assignment. She walks with quiet confidence, knowing that every step she takes is ordered by the Lord. Even when she walks through uncertain paths, she does so with assurance because she trusts the voice that guides her steps. There are seasons when she will be misunderstood, when others will question her motives or underestimate her strength. Yet she does not defend herself before men. She allows God to be her defender. She knows that silence can often speak louder than explanation. While others may try to define her by their limited understanding, she allows God to define her by His eternal truth. In her heart, she carries the quiet conviction that she belongs to God, and that is enough. A chosen woman realizes that her value does not fluctuate with circumstances or opinions. Whether she is celebrated or ignored, whether she is at the mountain's peak or in the valley of waiting, she remains constant in her identity. Her confidence is not conditional, it is spiritual. She walks with dignity because she knows she carries the image of her Creator. She does not strive to impress others because her life is already a reflection of divine craftsmanship. She was designed intentionally, and her existence itself is a declaration of God's perfection. She understands that human approval is fleeting, but divine purpose is eternal. People may change their opinions, but God never changes His plans. What He has spoken over her life remains true regardless of who believes it. Because of this, she does not fear rejection or delay. Instead, she uses every moment of waiting as an opportunity to grow in wisdom, faith, and endurance. She refuses to be distracted by the noise of criticism because she is tuned to the frequency of divine affirmation. Even in moments of isolation, she finds strength in communion with God. When others withdraw their support, she leans into His presence and finds peace that surpasses understanding. The chosen woman knows that solitude can be a sacred space where purpose is refined. It is in those quiet moments with God that she receives the courage to keep moving, even when no one else walks beside her. She learns that she is never truly alone when she carries the presence of the one who called her. A chosen woman carries an inner confidence that cannot be shaken by external circumstances. She doesn't need a crowd to feel significant because she already walks with the King. Her validation doesn't come from the approval of social circles or the affirmation of others. It comes from the assurance that she is fulfilling heaven's assignment. She knows that when God marks her for a purpose, every challenge becomes a part of her preparation, and every trial strengthens her resolve. Her faith keeps her grounded, and her trust keeps her moving forward. And as she continues to walk her path, she does so with grace, humility, and unshakable faith. Her strength doesn't come from applause, but from the quiet confidence that she is loved, chosen, and approved by God Himself. The world may not always understand her, but heaven celebrates her obedience. Every step she takes in trust becomes a testimony of divine favor, and every moment she stands firm becomes a declaration of God's faithfulness working through her life. When a woman learns to fully trust God, something extraordinary begins to unfold within her spirit. She no longer relies on her own understanding or the approval of others to move forward. Instead, she places her complete faith in the one who knows the end from the beginning. Trust is not just a feeling for her. It is a decision, a lifestyle, and a declaration of surrender. She wakes up each day knowing that even if she cannot see the whole path, the one who leads her can. Every step becomes sacred because it is guided by divine wisdom rather than human logic. In a world that constantly demands control and certainty, trusting God requires courage. It is not easy to let go of plans, timelines, or outcomes, yet this woman chooses faith over fear. She understands that divine timing often looks different from her own expectations. What seems delayed to her is perfectly aligned in God's calendar. She chooses to rest in that truth, believing that while she waits, God is working behind the scenes, orchestrating connections, preparing doors, and aligning her destiny in ways she cannot yet comprehend. Trust is the soil where miracles grow. A woman who trusts God doesn't panic when doors close because she knows that every closed door carries a message. This is not your door. She doesn't waste energy forcing what no longer fits her purpose. Instead, she stands still and watches as God opens the right one in His perfect time. Her faith allows her to move with grace through uncertainty, knowing that obedience in the unseen always leads to manifestation in the visible. There are seasons when everything seems silent, when prayers feel unanswered and the path looks hidden. But even then, she chooses trust over doubt. She reminds herself that God's silence is not his absence, it is often his strategy. During those quiet seasons, her faith is stretched, her patience is refined, and her character is strengthened. She realizes that trusting God is not only about believing in his power to act, but also about resting in his wisdom when he chooses to wait. When she puts her trust in God, fear begins to lose its grip. The things that once intimidated her no longer hold power over her spirit. She stops worrying about how everything will unfold and starts focusing on who holds it all together. This kind of trust gives her peace that cannot be explained, a calmness that defies logic, and a confidence that radiates strength. It allows her to walk through chaos with composure because her security doesn't come from circumstances. It comes from the faithfulness of God. Trusting God also transforms her vision. Where others see obstacles, she sees opportunities for faith to rise. She learns to look beyond what is visible and to expect divine intervention in impossible situations. When people tell her it cannot be done, she smiles, not out of pride, but because she knows that God specializes in doing what man calls impossible. Her trust turns every trial into a testimony waiting to unfold. She believes that God is never limited by situations. He is only waiting for her to believe. A woman who trusts God walks with a quiet authority that comes from knowing who stands beside her. She no longer begs for doors to open or people to help her. Instead, she moves in faith and the right doors open naturally. She doesn't need to manipulate outcomes or chase opportunities, because her trust in God attracts divine alignment. Every step of obedience becomes a magnet for favor. Her peace becomes her power, and her trust becomes her protection. Even when storms rage around her, her heart remains steady. She may feel the winds of adversity, but she refuses to let them uproot her faith. She has learned that storms are temporary, but the promises of God are eternal. Instead of panicking, she praises. Instead of complaining, she prays. Her trust shifts her focus from the problem to the promise, and that shift becomes her strength. She knows that the God who led her into the storm will surely lead her out stronger than before. As she grows in trust, she learns that surrender does not mean weakness. It means power under divine control. By letting go of her own agenda, she allows God to move freely in her life. Every time she releases something in faith, God replaces it with something greater. Every time she steps into the unknown, his hand meets hers in reassurance. Trust becomes her greatest weapon against fear, her greatest comfort in uncertainty, and her greatest key to walking in purpose. In her journey, she realized that trust is not built in moments of comfort, but in seasons of challenge. It is in the waiting, the testing, and the not, knowing that faith becomes alive. Every act of trust draws her closer to God. Every leap of faith deepens her dependence, and every victory becomes a reminder that she was never walking alone. Through her unwavering trust, her life becomes a living testimony that when a woman places her confidence fully in God, he begins to open doors, align circumstances, and make a way where there once seemed to be none. Every chosen woman must come to understand that preparation is a divine process, not an interruption to her destiny. There are seasons when life feels slow, when progress seems invisible, and when doors that once looked promising suddenly close. But in those moments, God is not withholding, He is working. He is shaping her spirit, refining her motives, and strengthening her faith, so that when opportunity arrives, she will be ready to carry it with grace. The woman who rushes ahead of God may obtain what she wants too soon, but the woman who waits in trust receives what she is truly meant to carry. In the stillness of waiting, she learns lessons that success could never teach her. She learns to rely not on her own strength, but on the power of God that sustains her through uncertainty. She begins to see that every trial has a purpose and every delay holds divine intention. When she looks back, she realizes that what she once called disappointment was actually God's protection. Her tears were not wasted. They watered the soil of her destiny. Her silence was not neglect. It was the sound of heaven preparing her next chapter. God often hides greatness in seasons of obscurity. Before He reveals a woman publicly, He develops her privately. While no one sees her struggle, God sees her surrender. While others underestimate her, God invests in her. He is more concerned with her foundation than her appearance, because what is built quickly can crumble easily. The process, though painful, ensures that when she stands tall, she will not fall. Her roots must go deep before her branches can spread wide. This hidden preparation becomes the anchor of her future stability. The woman in preparation learns to let go of her need for control. She stops fighting against the process and starts flowing with it. She understands that pruning is not punishment, it is preparation for fruitfulness. Every time God removes something from her life, He is making space for something better. The friendships that fade, the doors that close, the plans that collapse, all of them are instruments in the divine workshop, shaping her into the woman she is destined to become. Trusting this process transforms her pain into purpose. During this time, she may feel unseen, but she is never forgotten. Heaven's eyes are on her, even when the world's attention is not. The silence she experiences is not a void. It is God's sacred classroom where He teaches her to listen, to discern, and to depend. He trains her heart to recognize His voice above all others. When He finally brings her into her appointed time, she will walk with a quiet authority because she learned to hear Him in the hidden seasons. That intimacy with God becomes her greatest strength. Every chosen woman must pass through her wilderness before she reaches her promise. The wilderness strips her of pride, distractions, and dependence on human validation. It humbles her, yet at the same time, it empowers her. It teaches her that divine success is not built on applause, but on alignment. She learns to be content with God alone, to trust His timing without demanding explanations, and to serve faithfully even when no one notices. The wilderness becomes the proving ground where her faith matures and her obedience is tested. As she endures the process, she discovers that preparation often feels like breaking. But what feels like breaking is actually building. God allows certain pressures to mold her into strength, just as Gold must pass through fire before it shines. The crushing of her plans gives birth to new vision. The waiting refines her patience. The disappointments deepen her compassion. She emerges from the process not bitter but better, ready to carry her calling with humility and confidence. There is beauty in her hidden growth. Like a seed buried in darkness, she is developing roots that no one can see. Those roots will sustain her when storms come. She learns that every unseen moment matters. Every prayer whispered in loneliness, every act of obedience done quietly, every step of faith taken without recognition, all of it becomes a building block of her destiny. God honors what is done in secret, and in time, He rewards it openly. Through preparation, she learns to walk by faith and not by sight. Her confidence shifts from what she can accomplish to what God can perform through her. She stops striving and starts trusting. Her heart no longer races after results. It rests in obedience. She becomes content, not just in receiving promises, but in becoming the kind of woman who can sustain them. She realizes that divine timing is never late. It is always perfect, because God's process never wastes a single moment. When preparation has done its work, the woman who emerges is no longer the same. She carries wisdom born from waiting, faith shaped through testing, and peace forged in surrender. She no longer fears what she cannot control because she has seen how God uses every season for her good. She walks with quiet assurance, knowing that she was never being delayed. She was being developed, and everything that once felt like loss was actually making her ready for the fullness of what God has always planned for her life. A chosen woman carries a strength that is not loud, but deeply rooted in quiet confidence. Her power does not come from striving to prove herself, but from resting in the assurance of who she is in God. She does not need to raise her voice to make her presence felt, because her peace speaks louder than her words. While the world measures worth by visibility, she understands that true strength is found in stillness. Her calmness is not weakness, it is evidence of trust. She knows that she doesn't have to rush or compete, because what God has designed for her will arrive in its appointed time. Her confidence does not depend on attention or applause. She does not need recognition to feel valuable, for her worth is anchored in divine identity. She is not moved by trends, opinions, or the constant noise that demands validation. Her focus is inward, fixed on the purpose that's quietly within her soul. While others seek to be seen, she seeks to be aligned. She understands that purpose does not require publicity. It requires purity of heart and obedience of spirit. Her strength flows not from pride, but from peace. And her peace flows from her unshakable connection with God. When others around her chase comparison, she chooses contentment. She celebrates other women instead of competing with them, because she knows that their success does not diminish her own. Her security allows her to support rather than envy, to lift rather than tear down. She is confident enough to know that her journey is unique and her timing is divine. The world's measure of success can never define the magnitude of what God is doing in her life. Her quiet strength allows her to move in purpose without losing her peace. A chosen woman understands that her battles are not against people, but against the doubts that try to silence her spirit. She fights not with bitterness, but with prayer, not with arrogance, but with faith. Her weapon is not noise, but wisdom. She chooses her words carefully, for she knows that peace is more powerful than argument. When faced with misunderstanding, she does not rush to defend herself, because she knows that God is her defender. Her stillness confuses her enemies because they expect reaction. But she offers resilience instead. She moves with grace through situations that would have broken her in the past. Her maturity shows in how she handles pressure and how she responds to rejection. She no longer feels the need to prove her strength to anyone, because she has already proved it to herself in the secret place of prayer. Her strength was forged in moments no one saw, through tears she did not show, through prayers whispered in solitude, through faith sustained in silence. That hidden strength becomes the quiet power that carries her through every storm. She knows that true leadership does not come from position, but from posture. She leads not by commanding others, but by inspiring them through example. Her humility draws respect without demand. She listens before she speaks, serves before she leads, and prays before she decides. Her calm spirit brings stability wherever she goes. People feel safe in her presence because she carries peace that comes from divine assurance. Her life becomes a reflection of what it means to have power under control. There is a depth to her spirit that cannot be imitated. She does not rely on outward charm to influence others, because her influence flows from authenticity. She walks with dignity, not arrogance. Her character speaks when she remains silent. She has learned that true confidence does not boast. It breathes quietly. She no longer needs to announce what God is doing in her life, because her fruit speaks louder than her voice. Those who come near her feel inspired, not intimidated, because her strength invites others to rise rather than shrink. Her quiet strength becomes a shield against insecurity. She no longer seeks to fit into spaces that don't align with her purpose. She has learned to say no without guilt and to walk away without explanation. Her peace is too precious to trade for approval. She has outgrown the need to prove her worthiness, because she knows that she was already chosen long before anyone's opinion mattered. Her boundaries are firm but kind, her focus steady but compassionate. Her life becomes a testimony that true confidence is clothed in humility. She understands that peace is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of trust. Her calmness is an anchor in the middle of chaos. While others panic, she prays. While others rush, she rests. Her silence is not indifference. It is wisdom in motion. She knows when to speak and when to be still. Her discernment is sharp because her spirit is quiet enough to hear God's whisper. She does not act out of impulse. She moves out of instruction. That spiritual discipline sets her apart, allowing her to accomplish much without striving. Through her quiet strength, she becomes a living example of the divine balance. Soft yet strong, gentle yet unshakable, humble yet powerful. She doesn't need to shout to be noticed or fight to be respected. Her grace is her armor, her peace is her power, and her faith is her voice. In her silence, She carries authority. In her stillness, she carries vision. The world may not always understand her calm confidence, but heaven recognizes it as the mark of a woman who has mastered the art of walking with God in unwavering trust. A chosen woman soon realizes that opposition is not a sign of failure, but often a confirmation of divine calling. The moment she steps into her purpose, resistance begins to rise, not because she is wrong, but because she is powerful. The enemy never fights what poses no threat. Every attack, every misunderstanding, every word spoken against her becomes proof that she is moving in the right direction. The presence of opposition does not mean she is out of alignment. It often means she is walking directly in the will of God. The spiritual pressure she feels is the evidence that heaven has placed something valuable within her. When people begin to question her motives or mock her dreams, she learns not to take it personally. She understands that not everyone can comprehend what God is doing in her life because her vision was not given to them. Her calling was tailored by divine design, and that means her process will be misunderstood by those who cannot see what she carries. She stops explaining herself to people who are not equipped to understand her journey. Instead of arguing with critics, she keeps walking in quiet confidence, knowing that time will reveal what words cannot. Opposition teaches her to depend on God in a deeper way. It forces her to develop spiritual muscles that comfort and ease could never strengthen. When she faces rejection, she learns to rely on divine acceptance. When people turn away, she discovers that God remains constant. Every betrayal becomes a lesson in trust, every setback a stepping stone toward growth. Through her pain, she develops wisdom. Through her loneliness, she discovers intimacy with God. Opposition becomes her greatest teacher, shaping her into a woman of endurance and discernment. There are moments when the criticism feels heavy, when false words cut deep, and when her intentions are misjudged. But even then, she resists the urge to fight back in her own strength. She does not waste energy defending what God has already justified. She lets her character speak louder than the accusations. Her integrity becomes her response, and her peace becomes her protest. She walks in forgiveness, understanding that bitterness would only delay her blessing. By choosing grace over revenge, she disarms her enemies without uttering a single harsh word. The chosen woman learns that isolation often follows elevation. When God begins to lift her higher, not everyone can come along. Some will distance themselves because they feel threatened by her growth, while others will misunderstand her transformation. Yet she does not shrink herself to stay comfortable for others. She accepts that divine calling often requires divine separation. The higher she climbs, the fewer voices she listens to, until only God's remains. What once felt like loneliness becomes the sacred space where destiny matures in silence. Every time she faces opposition, she gains a new revelation of who she truly is. The fire of adversity refines her motives, purifies her heart, and reveals her true strength. She begins to see herself not as a victim of criticism, but as a vessel of purpose. Each challenge strips away insecurity and replaces it with spiritual boldness. The woman who once feared rejection now walks with resilience because she understands that her worth is not determined by how people treat her, but by how God sees her. She notices that the very people who try to hinder her often become instruments in her advancement. Their attempts to block her path push her into new levels of prayer, focus, and creativity. What was meant to discourage her only drives her closer to her destiny. She starts to see how God uses even her enemies to fulfill his plans. Like a sculptor, he uses pressure to shape her into perfection. Opposition, rather than breaking her, becomes the force that propels her forward. The chosen woman carries herself differently because she has learned to discern spiritual warfare. She no longer panics when things go wrong. Instead, she prays with authority. She knows that the battle is not against people, but against forces that fear her light. Instead of retaliating in anger, she responds with intercession. Her spiritual awareness allows her to see beyond surface conflict and recognize the hand of God working even through chaos. Her peace in battle becomes her power, confusing every scheme meant to destroy her. Over time, she becomes immune to the sting of words that once wounded her. Her confidence grows not in herself, but in the one who fights for her. She no longer seeks to be understood because she understands her assignment. The rejection of man only pushes her deeper into the acceptance of God. Every door that closes reminds her that her steps are ordered. Every obstacle reminds her that her calling carries weight. Her enemies do not define her, they refine her. Her critics do not delay her, they direct her toward greater purpose. Through all opposition, she learns that her calling cannot be cancelled by anyone's opinion. What God has ordained for her cannot be blocked by gossip, fear, or envy. The more resistance she faces, the more determined she becomes to keep walking in faith. She wears her scars as evidence of endurance, her patience as a crown of strength, and her trust as her greatest weapon. The woman who once trembled at rejection now stands tall in her purpose, knowing that every battle she faced was proof that she was chosen, anointed, and destined to fulfill something far greater than herself. When a woman begins to walk boldly in the identity God has given her, she enters into a new rhythm of life, where divine favor starts to follow her steps. She no longer waits for the right conditions or perfect timing. She moves with faith, trusting that every step of obedience activates heaven on her behalf. The more she walks in alignment, the more she realizes that faith is not about seeing what's ahead, but about believing in who walks beside her. Her boldness becomes the key that unlocks supernatural doors, not because she is powerful in herself, but because she carries the authority of divine purpose within her spirit. As she chooses to act on what she believes, she notices that opportunities begin to find her without her striving to create them. The favor of God starts arranging circumstances that she could never have orchestrated on her own. She begins to meet people who are divinely assigned to help her. Doors open in unexpected places, and solutions appear at the exact moment she needs them. Faith in action becomes a magnet for divine acceleration. The world may call it coincidence, but she knows it is the orchestration of a faithful God responding to her trust. Her journey of faith teaches her that obedience is more powerful than ambition. She no longer rushes to chase what she desires. Instead, she listens for the gentle whisper of God's guidance. When He says, go, she moves without hesitation. When He says, wait, she rests without complaint. This rhythm of trust and obedience keeps her in divine flow, allowing blessings to reach her effortlessly. Her actions are not driven by fear or pressure, but by quiet conviction that God's plan will always exceed her own. Faith in action also transforms how she handles setbacks. Instead of viewing delays as denial, she recognizes them as divine positioning. What seems like a pause is often preparation for greater release. Every time she feels like giving up, she remembers that faith doesn't remove mountains instantly. It gives her strength to climb them. Her consistency becomes her victory. Even when she doesn't see progress, she keeps planting seeds in faith, knowing that in due time, her harvest will come forth abundantly. As her trust deepens, she starts to see how faith changes the atmosphere around her. Her words carry power because they are spoken in alignment with heaven's authority. When she prays, things shift. When she declares God's promises, they begin to manifest. She no longer doubts the effectiveness of her voice because she knows she is echoing divine truth. Her life becomes a reflection of what happens when faith moves from being a belief in the heart to an action that shapes reality. Her faith also draws favor that cannot be explained by logic. Opportunities she never pursued begin to chase her. People start recognizing her light without her needing to promote herself. She walks into rooms she once felt unqualified for, and grace precedes her like a royal escort. Her obedience becomes her resume, and her faith becomes her introduction. The more she trusts, the more she attracts the right things at the right time, not because she is striving, but because she is walking in sync with divine timing. The chosen woman understands that her journey is not about speed, but about alignment. She no longer measures success by how quickly things happen, but by how faithfully she follows God's direction. Her confidence is steady because she knows that nothing can stop what God has ordained for her. Even when obstacles arise, she sees them as signs that she is moving in the right direction. Her trust transforms struggle into strategy, turning every barrier into a bridge toward greater purpose. Her actions become a living sermon of faith. She doesn't just talk about trusting God. She lives it. When she gives generously, forgives freely, and steps out in courage, she displays what it means to walk by faith and not by sight. Her life inspires others to believe again, to take bold steps, and to trust that God's promises are still alive. Her consistency becomes contagious. Without even trying, she becomes a vessel through which others see the power of divine faith in motion. Faith in action teaches her that miracles are not always dramatic. They are often disguised as small daily victories. The courage to keep moving, the grace to forgive, the strength to wait patiently. All of these are miracles born from faith. Every time she chooses to believe instead of doubt, she writes another line in her testimony. Her journey becomes evidence that faith is not merely a concept, it is a force that creates transformation in every area of life. As she continues to walk this path, her faith matures into a lifestyle rather than a moment. She no longer needs to feel strong to act strong, because she knows that divine strength flows through her weakness. Her obedience keeps heaven engaged in her journey. She moves forward, not because everything is certain, but because she has learned that faith itself is the bridge between promise and fulfillment. Her life becomes a living example that when a chosen woman walks in unwavering trust, divine acceleration follows her steps, and the impossible begins to bow before her faith.